What's good, YouTube, man? It's your boy dMillionaire back with another video. And as y'all can tell from the title, man, we got JxmyHighroller. We done with the 90s. And look, if y'all been on social media lately, bro, y'all been tapped in with like Twitter, Instagram. It's been a debate, man, about the 90s now, bro. A bunch of the, you know what I'm saying, what they call them, the left-hand bandits. I ain't gonna lie to you, respectfully. I think there's some truth to it, but to say Michael Jordan ain't have a left hand, bro, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Let's be real, bro. Jordan had a left hand, bro. I'm sit here like it probably wasn't strong as the right hand, but it's like, bro, if you can't stop him, you gotta like nobody can stop Jordan. He won 6 rings. He got what 4, 5 MVPs. Like obviously you couldn't stop him. He has to have some sort of left. You think people wasn't watching film back then, thinking, oh yeah, he only goes right. Let me force him left. You think if that was the case, you think like, come on, bro, like let's be real. But anyways, I want to see what Jimmy got to say, man, because look, it's been a huge debate about the 90s. And look, I'm not born in the 90s, bro. I didn't get to watch this live. The 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, baby. So look, I mean, I didn't get to see that, but let's see, bro.
Good men. Old school versus new school. Back in the day versus modern day. A story as old as time itself. I tried to ignore this bloodbath, but just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, it all got so much worse.
We done with the 90s.
Film of NBA
yeah, I want to
games
see,
from the
bro.
80s and 90s coming to light, showing that the good old days were in fact not that good. This whole time, the punishing defensive legend was actually just a bunch of plumbers camping out in the paint looking for someone to hack. Shots clanking off the backboard, players running around aimlessly, wreaking havoc. And worst of all, Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the supposed greatest basketball player of all time, didn't even have a left hand. What is going on? Have we been lied to about basketball in the 80s and 90s? Are we really done with that era of hoops?
Hey, what's so crazy though, bro? I told people that shit though. Before all of this came about, I said, bro, I just think the skill level, you gotta realize like the skill level overall in every sport, it just as time goes by, it gets better and better, bro. Like
and cherry-picked clips.
You can see dumb shit like this in an NBA game today too. But I don't know. Let's see what he got, man. It's a 30-minute video. I ain't gonna lie. So hey, look, grab your popcorn, get your chips, get your candy.
Today's
we're gonna be here for a minute.
By SeatGeek. The NBA season is in full swing. The MLB season.
I'm not sponsored by SeatGeek, so yeah.
5 simple words that have completely divided fans of the NBA. I've seen well thought out video essays, hard-hitting analysis, testimonies from past and present players talking about their experience in the league and how it's changed over the years. And none of those things managed to do what these 5 simple words have done in just a week.
With the 90s.
Soon enough, the clips came rolling in of players from that era dribbling off their feet, throwing up air balls, and putting together moves that you might see at your local high school's JV game. So, for whatever it's worth, here is my long-winded take on this whole discussion.
What you got to say, Jimmy? What we got, man? What we talking about? We got Jordan, Bird, Magic.
I want to begin by saying what this discourse has taught me more than anything else is that NBA fans today never actually took the time to go back and watch games of the past. Brother.
I ain't gonna sit here and pretend like I watched every game from the 90s, but that's what I'm saying, bro. Like, you can't cherry pick clips. That's like me taking a clip of Curry on the fast break. Y'all know the clip I'm talking about, where he came down the fast break, like he was about to 2-hand punch it. He slipped, got the ball back at the 3 line, then airballed the 3. Like, bro, you could pull that clip up and be like, yeah, look at how ass they are now. Like, come on, bro. And you could also pull up the same clip of Curry hitting the damn half-court 3 and turning around. Like, it's cherry pick clip, bro. I can't sit here and say it was they were turning over the ball and all of this. Like, bro, we could come on,
whether you are new or have been watching for years, to just go back and watch full games, not highlights,
the full game, the whole 48
full-length games of eras from the past. And
that's
after
what I
seeing
mean.
This discussion devolve into where it is today, it is clear to me that most people never take the time. I'm seeing countless fans have this sort of awakening as they're watching films of these old games as if the footage was buried or lost and it's finally being unearthed for the world to see. It's been right here on YouTube for the past 15 years.
Facts.
You mean to tell
I
me
watched some of Jordan's
chime in with a full-blown thesis on the GOAT debate? Never spared the time to even watch the games.
Look at Dr. J, boy, that boy's some tough.
I guess that does explain a lot. Now, I'd like to think I'm somewhere in the middle on this whole discussion. I have said on multiple occasions that players in today's NBA are simply more skilled than players of the past, which has resulted in bigger stat lines and higher point totals than ever before. It's not the defense that has gotten worse, it's the offense that has gotten better. You know, that whole spiel. But I also have an appreciation for the greats that came before and how incredible some players of past eras were. In fact, I almost feel like I'm hallucinating seeing this 90s basketball slander campaign unfold in front of my eyes. It feels like everyone's perception on the age-old debate changed literally overnight. I know that's not the case, but after seeing all of this play out, it sure feels that way. But today, I'm not just gonna show you some cherry-picked clips or unhinge this narrative even further. I'm gonna show you real film, real data, and proof of how we might actually be done with the 80s and 90s.
Let's see, bro. Because Jimmy, see the thing with Jimmy, I respect about him. If y'all new to JxmyHighroller, bro, he not gonna say some shit and not have facts. You know what I'm saying? Have stats and facts to back it. So people saying, "Oh, we done with the 90s," and yeah, bro, they're speaking from the clip that they seen. Jimmy gonna break it down into numbers and all type of shit.
Jordan really had no left hand.
My guy right here.
Spoiler, he did.
Spoiler alert: Jordan had a left hand. Like what, bro? Duh.
Now, I have been an advocate for the modern players are better than players of the past movement for quite some time now. In fact, as crazy as it is for younger fans to say Michael Jordan was trash, it's just as absurd for older fans to say the game hasn't evolved and gotten better over the last 30 years. Because that's all this debate really is. Young fans versus old fans, or fans that watched this versus fans that are watching this. But objectively, players today are much better than they were in the 80s and even the 90s. Specifically, the lower end of the talent pool in the NBA today is vastly better than it was in the past. I think great players would be great in any era, but with the spacing, the shot making, the emphasis on offense as opposed to defense has made the depth across the NBA today just way ahead of where it was in the 80s and the 90s. There was, without exaggeration, guys in the NBA throughout the 80s and 90s that were on NBA rosters just to accumulate fouls and sit in the paint and be big. Some of these players were offensively inept, and that was okay because their role was not to create offense. But in today's NBA, where offense reigns supreme, there is no room for these players. Now, you could and should go back and watch film of games, not highlights, from this era and see just how limited the skill sets of some of these players were.
That's what I've said. In the game now, in the game back then, it was like out of the 10 people on the court from each team, out of the 5 players, it's probably like 1 or 2 players that can go and get them a bucket, really create. Bro, on a team like, I'm going to say, let's say Boston, bro, they have 4 people that can all get a bucket. Derek White can go get him one. Holiday can go get him one. Tatum and Brown can go get him one. Porzingis, he could put the ball on the ground and get somewhere with it. You feel what I'm saying? All 5 players on the court. It was not, bro. All 5 players on this court, bro. Some of them, literally, is what he said, was there just to be there, bro.
Was
just a body.
Set jumpers, slashers coming downhill for layups, and big men trying to muscle their way to a bucket down low.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like
what appears to be a wrestling match. Catch a player off guard with the double team, and they immediately pick up their dribble. Simple things like guards turning their back to the basket 20 feet out instead of creating space off the dribble. Even players looking down at the ball while trying to get out on a fast break was very common in this era. And these aren't lowlights or cherry-picked incidences. This is just what the game looked like 35 years ago. But even without film, nearly every metric suggests modern players are
crazy because there's nobody on the court. There's nobody in the game now that can't dribble the ball for real.
3-point percentage was worse. Turnover percentage was higher. They used to shoot more free throws, but still ended up with far less points. Now, this is not to say that this era of hoops was trash. That's just disingenuous and flat out wrong. These were the best players in the world at the time. It was just simply not as good as what it is today. But maybe there's another layer to this that needs to be factored in to really understand why these players were not as skilled as the players of today. Now, despite this being a very relevant topic for years, the idea of rule changes and how these changes have affected the game still remain a mystery to some. Players were a product of their era and the rules of their era. The first step to discovering greats of the past is to watch film of them play. The next step is to gather and understand the context of the film you are watching. When you see a 6'9" Magic Johnson go flying down the court with what looks like kind of a stiff dribble, you may think the man has no bag. But my friends, Magic Johnson did have a bag, but the rules in place at the time only allowed him to reach so far into it before he got called for every violation in the rulebook. Consider the fact that any move where your hand wasn't completely on top of the basketball was considered a carry. No zero steps, no gather steps. You get 2 steps, and anything more was called
that's a travel?
No back steps, no gather steps.
1, 2. That's a travel?
Steps, and anything
more.
Oh,
nah, okay, nah, they might have been dick riding, bro. Oh, nah. Wait, that's a travel?
Carry. No zero steps, no gather
1,
steps.
2.
You get 2 steps, and anything more was called a travel.
Oh, nah,
no
that's
backward
crazy.
shuffles to create separation. No lunging into
That was a
players
travel
to
too?
draw easy fouls. Here's a clip of Danny Ainge hitting Kevin McHale with a hezzy in the mid-'80s. And the man thinks he just witnessed witchcraft.
But when practice sessions were completed, some of the most competitive competition began.
Bro, that weak ass hezzy. Man, hell nah, that's a hezzy, bro. That weak ass shit.
Some of the most competitive competition began.
That weak ass hezzy. Bro, I'm not going for that, bro. Damn, he called the double look. He called the double dribble. That's not even a double dribble. That's a hezzy.
Here's some more clips of players getting called for travels and carries doing moves that are very typical and allowed in 2024. 90% of the moves you see today, the very method most players generate their offense, would be called for some sort of violation 40 or 30 or even 20 years ago. And this isn't just some cop-out or excuse as to why these players of the past weren't doing this stuff. The rule changes are real, documented pieces of NBA history. You can literally look them up. The game got looser, players grew up and shaped their game around these looser rules, and now they have free reign
call
to
it
let
for
their
real, because if
basketball
they call
back
it, then
run
it's
wild.
like,
But
damn.
that's kind of the point. Players of the past didn't grow up practicing 25-footers. They didn't work on a dozen moves to create separation. They played in offensive systems that focused on the team, the collective, schemes and sets that resembled something closer to college basketball, where ISO possessions were few and far in between, so they never developed an arsenal to counter these situations. The rules of the time limited their game, which resulted in them having a more limited skill set than players today. If Larry Bird grew up with a three-point line, he might have been the greatest long-range shooter ever, but he didn't. And
but at the same time, though, it would have been the same kind of scenario that we have now in the future. Like, there's going to be somebody that's going to shoot. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I said, bro, there's going to be somebody that's going to come along and shoot the 3-ball better than Stephen Curry, bro. Believe it or not. I don't believe it. It may not be in my lifetime. I don't believe it, obviously, but that might be the old head in me talking. I don't think nobody will ever be better than Steph Curry, but there's going to be somebody that's going to be better than Stephen Curry, bro. Like, that's just how the time goes. Like, yeah, Bird probably would have been the greatest three-point shooter until Reggie Miller came to the league. Like, it would have been the same thing that it was now.
And he wasn't as efficient as the best shooters today.
But yeah, time goes by.
These players of the past might
like, I just seen Draymond hit more threes in his career than Bird. Let's be real, bro. Like,
but they didn't. And I don't think we should assume that. The fact is, they played in a different time, and they became a product of that time. But that's not to say the game was trash back then, or that the superstars of these eras couldn't compete in today's league.
Because the way he say it, bro, shoot, would people back then, will we compete with the people today compete back then with all of the carrying rules and traveling shit? Would Shea be Shea back then?
Which is
probably
in fact
not.
A very
Everything
long
would be a
time
damn
ago.
carry.
In 1985, Magic Johnson won an NBA title, Larry Bird won the league MVP, and Michael Jordan won Rookie of the Year. That was 39 years ago from today, which is the same exact amount of time that has passed from that 1985 season to the year the NBA was founded in 1946. Look at these clips. Do you think these players could compete with the likes of Bird, Magic, and Jordan? Let me answer that for you. No.
Hell
but take
no.
the best players of the 80s and 90s, and could they compete in today's league? Absolutely. Give these guys some credit. Watching this today is the equivalent of watching this in the 80s. And yet this product is vastly closer to the basketball we see today than this product was to what fans were witnessing in the 80s. In fact, we can use different superstars as sort of a cross-generational measuring stick to see just how stiff the competition has been over the years. Larry and Magic played Michael, who played Kobe, who played LeBron, who has played the players of today. And nowhere down this timeline was there any real jump or fall off in production or level of competition from one era to the next. Each era had their stars. Those stars crossed paths with stars of other eras, and no one era was clear-cut ahead of the other. If the 80s were so bad, then why did players of the 90s have to wait for those guys to get old and retire to have a shot at winning? And if the 90s were so bad, then why did players of the 2000s not win until those guys retired? We don't need to assume that adjacent eras could compete with one another because we actually saw it. MJ struggled with some of the guys.
Yeah, but what about, okay, Jordan struggled with the 80s. What we gonna say? Kobe struggled with the 90s. I mean, Kobe and Shaq ran the 2000s. Then Kobe ran the.
Shaq struggled against Hakeem and Kobe struggled against MJ. LeBron struggled against guys like Duncan and Dirk. And players of today have struggled to get past some of the older players in the league who are.
I was just talking about this too. The Nuggets cannot beat Golden State. I just talked about that shit too. But why would you put Luka and Kawhi? Luka be doing his thing against Kawhi. But I get what he means, though. I get the point.
Are a product of the previous
like
era.
a Jokic and
now,
Bron.
what we shouldn't do is jump 3 or 4 eras at a time, ignoring entire decades of evolution and saying the game back then was better or even as good as it is today. At a certain point, the knowledge and wisdom that comes from actually witnessing decades of NBA history, like some older fans have, becomes skewed and watered down by nostalgia and a generational bias. Superstars are superstars because their game transcends the era they played in, but they also played in an inferior league. These two ideas are not mutually exclusive. And although generational talents of the past would do just fine today, this same logic does not apply to the vast majority of the league throughout the 80s and 90s.
Hey! I ain't gonna lie, they low-key going crazy though. When did the NBA become not trash? So Shaq and Penny was trash, and Anthony Edwards and Cat is not trash.
If the 80s were inferior to today's league, and the 90s were inferior as well, when did the NBA become not trash? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Ironically, I think there's a pretty clear distinction to the skill set of players before Michael Jordan hit his peak and after. For example, the early 90s and late 90s, although being in the same decade, were massively different in play style and skill set. Think for a second about the fact that Magic Johnson was still in his prime in the early 90s, and Allen Iverson was entering his prime in the late 90s. In less than 10 years, basketball became a massively different game.
Bro.
By the late 90s, the players who grew up watching Jordan fly through the air and slice up defenses were in the league and were reshaping the role that perimeter players played. Guys like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Stephon Marbury, Grant Hill, Tracy McGrady, Vince Carter. All these guys came into the league around the same time and were products of what they saw MJ do throughout his career. Players with a skill set that more closely resembles what we see today than it did to the skill sets of players of the 80s and even early 90s.
Yeah, because you gotta realize, bro,
the distinction of when the league really took a lead in competitive.
As time goes by, obviously, Bron was able to watch Kobe, Jordan, Hakeem, the game evolves. I don't know why this is a debate for real. Obviously, in 2024, they're going to be players with bigger bags than they were in the 90s because they don't watch film, bro. You don't think Shea, Luka, bro, they watch LeBron film. They watch Jordan film. They watch Kobe film. They watch, you feel me, Penny. Shit, they probably watched young Kyrie film, you see what I'm saying? Bro, the players of now are gonna be
but rather
products of the past.
You can go back and watch these guys play, and it's not too different.
So look at Jason Williams. That boy is so tough.
Or you can point to the shift in play style that happened in the late 2010s.
White chocolate.
After Steph Curry redefined what makes a great championship caliber player, and the league adjusted to this new 3-point heavy perimeter focused style of basketball. Similar to Jordan, the kids who watched what Steph was doing in the mid 2010s emulated replicated that style of play, tailored their games to it, and are now in the league doing things that only Steph could do a decade ago. So if we're done with the 80s and 90s, where can we look
crazy
back
though.
and no longer apply this era tax?
And
on
they
these
still
players?
can't fuck with
Most fans
Steph.
would agree that the turn of the century
Hey,
is where the modern era of
Bean.
hyper-skilled players began. You can say objectively that this era was not trash, and most players of this generation would do just fine in
Bro,
today's
T-Mac will average 30 today.
If that is the case, then modern NBA fans are holding a ticking time bomb, and they might not even know it.
So when is the NBA gonna get trash again then? If the 90s and the 80s were trash, right? When does the NBA become trash again now? Yeah, like okay, now we done with the 10s. Okay, let's okay, cool.
NBA fans claim our favorite players, the guys we grew up watching, are
Look,
not as
yeah,
good as the
Chet
players of the
Wemby
future. What will you
is the
have
future
to
now.
say? Right now, there is no one in the world who can shoot like Steph Curry. But inevitably, there will be. And eventually, there will be many players who can shoot like him. His records will fall, his percentages won't look as good through the lens of 2040, and although his legacy will be cemented,
Imagine people
his
shooting like
actual game
45
will be put into question.
from the
And
three.
based on the arguments I'm hearing today on why past players were trash, we will have nothing to say that will change.
So what will make Curry trash in the future? If somebody comes through and they shooting what Curry shoots, what, like 12, 13 threes a game? So somebody comes through and shoots 12 plus threes and they shoot them at a 50 clip. Does that make Curry trash? I mean, I guess, but what metric? Like, we're saying Curry the greatest shooter of all time because it's like anything the nigga puts up, we just feel like it's going in. But what happens when there's gonna be somebody else that comes along that everything they put up just is cash. What separates him from Curry? Is it gonna be the made threes? Is it gonna be like, you feel me? Like, ain't gonna lie.
That Curry was the first to do what he's doing. He is
he
a
was the
pioneer
first.
of the modern NBA. We have context to back up our claims. But if we aren't willing to hear older fans out today, what makes us think younger fans will hear us out?
Oh
in the
me,
future?
they're not gonna hear that
My
shit, bro.
words.
Let
There will be a day when young
what's his
fans will go
name?
back,
Cooper
watch
Flag
film
come into
of
the league
LeBron,
doing what
and
KD
say
was
he
doing
couldn't
and
compete
shit
with
and say he
players
was
of the future.
ass.
In fact, it's
Nah, I ain't gonna
already
lie.
happening. Fans saying he has no bag. Younger players putting up bigger numbers than he ever did. Skill sets a bit deeper with
I
games
don't
that
care,
look
bro.
more polished. It's all fun and games now to crack jokes about past eras. But our day will come too, and it ain't gonna be pretty. But Giannis could only run and dunk. Your era was trash. Y'all had
You
it
couldn't
in,
fuck with Giannis.
couldn't
Hey, Giannis back in the day couldn't fuck with him though. Hey, look, all Giannis could do was run and dunk, bro. I watched Giannis from year 1 to what Giannis on year 9, year 10? Bro, Giannis done came a long way, bro. Giannis ain't have no bag other than running and dunking. Now he got a little mid-range jumper now. He could pull a 3 from here and there. He could actually shoot free throws that was like a 65, 70 clip. Hey, Giannis done came a long way. But nah, that is kind of crazy though. People gonna be like, Jokic's ass. I can't wait till 10 years from now when my little nephews and shit like that, like, oh, bro, he's ass.
If you're truly a fan of it. But
I'll pull up goddamn Lou Williams clips and tell you Lou Williams to get your favorite player 20.
For years, we heard y'all badmouth modern players, saying the league is soft, players today couldn't compete.
That's just crazy,
back
bro.
in my day, real men played the game. Y'all cannot be mad that some fans are done with the 80s and 90s when y'all never even gave modern basketball a chance. Sure, a lot of fans never took the time to go back and watch the greats of the past, but let's be honest for a second. Older fans don't watch games today. They catch a stray clip on Facebook of LeBron flopping, and like an echo chamber of disgruntled old men, they just start firing away in the comments, agreeing with one another.
Bro.
Y'all asked for this. I've been watching the NBA since the mid-2000s. Kobe, D-Wade, McGrady, Iverson, Shaq, Nash, those were my guys. But I can acknowledge those greats and say they were incredible while also acknowledging that that version of the NBA as a whole was not as refined or as good as it is today. Now, will I be able to make that distinction in 20 years when some snot-nosed brat tells me my glorious king was trash? I'm not so sure.
You can't tell me LeBron. You can't tell me LeBron trash 20 years from now, bro. I'll give you 10 reasons as to why, bro. And the first reason gonna be 3-1.
No, it's time to once and for all take a real close look at this accusation.
Let's see, bro. So Jordan ain't have no left. Let's see, but this is the part of the video I really wanted to see.
I felt like I was having a bad dream when I first saw this claim.
Oh,
but
God.
unfortunately, I was not. I feel like no one actually believes this. This is just some high-level trolling. But in an effort to stop this nonsense from spreading any further, I have no choice but to take these accusations seriously. So I selected 8 random games ranging from Michael Jordan's rookie season all the way up to the mid-90s, and play by play gathered all of his possessions throughout these games, charted when he went to his right, when he went to his left, and what those possessions
Thank you, Jimmy. I told y'all Jimmy gonna get y'all some numbers.
Jordan made a move with his left hand or his right hand 227 times. Of those 227 moves, 121 of them were with his right hand and 106 of them were with his left hand. Of the 121 right-handed moves, he passed up or got fouled on 54 of them, so I didn't bother charting those. 65 of these moves resulted in a shot, in which he made 63% of them and only turned the ball over 2 times. Now, moves that he made with his left hand resulted in a pass or him getting fouled 45 times, while 55 of these left-handed moves ended up in a shot, in which he made 51%, and 6 moves resulted in a turnover. So based on this
he
data,
was more
Jordan was
effective
definitely
going
more
right.
comfortable going right,
Yeah,
especially
but
near the rim and
could
even
go
on
left.
mid-range jumpers.
I ain't gonna lie
He
though.
struggled a bit in comparison.
I ain't gonna front. If we being objective here, he didn't really have too much of a left for real. Now let's really be real though. Cause okay, elbow jumpers, elbow to elbow. See, look, in these games he picked, he barely missed from the right elbow. A lot of his misses came from that left elbow. Now, I ain't gonna lie, look, turnovers on that left side.
To his
Not gonna cap. And this is the middle of the court. I'm not even gonna really count that. I ain't gonna front though. If we being objective though, he really ain't have too much of a left. Let's really talk about it.
right,
Let's really talk about it,
a
bro.
left-handed dribble. But overall, Jordan went to his left 47% of the time. And although it was his weaker hand,
It was his
still
weaker
above
hand.
league average,
Yeah,
even while
it
going
was
to
his weaker
left.
hand for sure. But
eight
that's
games in
everybody though.
350
Everybody got
minutes
a
of
weak
basketball
hand.
is a relatively small sample size.
No.
So I looked into it further and found this. A detailed breakdown of Michael Jordan's shot chart and shot tendencies in 3 seasons from 1990 to 1992.
Okay.
126 games and over 4,800 minutes in total, tracking exactly what Michael did on the court for 3 seasons. And here's what the data shows. In total, Michael made 1,074 moves in isolation, going either to his right or to his left hand. 48% of those moves were with his right hand, and 52% of those moves were with his left hand.
Okay.
When going to the right, Michael shot 61.7% on 410 shots with 15 turnovers, resulting in 1.38 points per possession. When going to his left, Michael shot 61.3% on 421
So he turned the ball. It definitely was his weaker hand though. He turned the ball over double as many times going to the left. Okay.
So even with a much larger sample size, Michael not only had a left hand, he went to it just as often as he went to his right and was nearly as proficient with his left as he was with his right. Now, for some context, throughout this 3-year span, Michael made on average 4.4 left-handed isolation moves, or in this case, isolation possessions, that resulted in 1.31 points per possession. Now, here are some prolific scores from this season and their overall tendencies and efficiency in isolation. Keep in mind, this data includes both right-handed and left-handed moves from these players. And now here is Michael Jordan with just his left hand. Yeah, I'd say contrary to what has now become popular belief, Michael Jordan had a left hand. And I cannot believe we had to dig into the data to come to this conclusion.
Type shit. I would say he had a left hand, he had a right hand, he had a weaker left hand and a right hand, but I think it's not like.
I think the overall idea that the 80s and 90s
That's
were
everybody,
a far less
though.
skilled time in the NBA compared to today is probably fair. I mean, you'd be crazy to think the game hasn't evolved in 4 decades. But to say the league was trash back then is just wrong. I think more than anything, it's the style of play and the way basketball games would unfold back then that really throws some fans off when they go to watch film of these old games. It's like looking at a box score from the mid-2000s and thinking everyone sucked because the games finished with final scores in the 80s. But the players weren't bad, it was just a different game back then. It was slower, more methodical, more team and scheme-based than it is today. And similarly, I think you could say the 80s and 90s had its fair share of bad basketball. But that doesn't mean all the players were bad, especially the superstars of those eras. That was just the state of the game they were playing in. I think some older fans have a skewed perception of how good the game was back then, but I also think they just genuinely liked that style of ball regardless of the evolution of the league. In 20 years, there could be a dozen players around the league that shoot like Steph Curry, but I doubt we will hold the same appreciation and affinity for those players as we did to the guy who pioneered this style of play.
Yeah, like Steph is the only one doing that. Like
in the 90s,
yeah,
no one looked back
I don't
at
know
how the league was in the 60s claiming it was better. And so realistically, we shouldn't be looking back at the 80s and 90s claiming the league was superior than it is today, or even just as good for that matter. A lot of these ideas that favor modern basketball are becoming more mainstream as fans dive deeper into these topics and add context to narratives that have been floating around for decades. But I think this push to be done with the 80s and 90s is a bit overkill. We want to add context and nuance and knowledge to these discussions, not remove entire decades from it altogether. Sadly, I don't think any of this has or will change anyone's mind. This revolt against old school ball was either confirmation of what you already thought, or this entire discussion is just blasphemy to you. Are we done with the 80s and 90s? Maybe, but for the sake of the game and the greats that paved the way, I sure hope not.
Ooh, that boy AI. Nah, I like this. I like this video. I think this was tough right here, bro. Shout out Jimmy, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Shout out Jimmy. W video. As I said, bro, he gonna get y'all numbers and, you know what I'm saying, tell y'all what's up with this. So I ain't gonna front. I think thoughts. He brought some good points. Honestly, bro, I love basketball, bro. I appreciate basketball from the 80s, the 90s to today. You feel what I'm saying? So look, end of the day, yes, players today are more skilled and talented, bro, but you take, as he said, you take the 10 best players from them eras and put them against the 10 best players of this era, it'll be a great game. It wouldn't be the players from this era wouldn't smack them, and I don't think they would smack us, bro. I think it would just be a very competitive game. Who knows how it'll go. But anyways, yo, that's all for this video, man. Hope y'all enjoyed. If y'all did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, comment down below your thoughts. I'm gonna holler at y'all in the next video, man.